That's something I'd like to ask you. First, you said in this memo that you didn't buy the stocks, and then eventually it came out that you actually had done the deal, and you had this place where first you didn't assume that you were so close to Mr. Vieira, and then it came out that you had some meetings.
No, this idea that something came out, nothing's come out that's inconsistent with the truth, as I've explained in my statements. Yes. You have a very lively press here. Benfica is a big topic. I've read false statements that I met with Vieira in April. It's not true. The last time I was in Portugal prior to mid-June was before COVID. I remember the streets were full and people were running around without masks and life was normal. So there was no April meeting. The idea that I made a statement that I hadn't bought the shares and it came out I did, you've seen the contract. Mm-hmm. It's a deposit. Yeah. You know, when you're buying a house in the United States, you put down a deposit, you have to acquire the house later. So it's possible this is lost in translation, maybe.
But we are aware that in this contract there was the first payment days after the moment you signed the deal, and then this month you will pay more. So there was a schedule for payments.
No.
That's correct?
The word payment, I think, is not the right term. In the contract it says deposit. Mm-hmm. You put down a deposit. If you don't acquire the shares later, you lose your deposit. So the contract uses the words non-refundable deposit. Okay. That's very different than payment.
So you haven't paid anything yet beside that deposit?
I paid the deposit. The second deposit would have been due last week. Mm-hmm. In light of the fact that it appears that Mr. Santos, without the approval of the board, mm-hmm. and the fact that I am potentially, if I buy a club in England, mm-hmm. I would be deemed a competitive entity, mm-hmm. then it's not clear that the shares can be delivered to me. So Mr. Santos graciously has kept me in the contract, not required me to make the second deposit, and he and I are going to discuss it. I would like to answer your other question. The idea that I said I didn't have dealings with Mr. Vieira and it came out that I had dealings with Mr. Vieira, I still stand by the accuracy and the specificity of my first statement. What I said in the very first interview with Felicia Cabrita, she says, well, have you met Mr. Vieira? I said, well, the whole world has met him, but in the context of this transaction, I've only dealt with Mr. Santos. And I said clearly, I've only sought and negotiated and closed an agreement with Mr. Santos. So the contract was drafted by me. This idea that he was running around Mr. Vieira with the contract's not true. I sent the copy of the contract from the United States before I arrived. It was negotiated a little bit before I came, and the rest of it negotiated directly with Mr. Santos and his lawyer while I was here. It was the day after the contract was signed, I asked to meet Mr. Vieira or anybody in leadership to make sure I was welcome, and that's when I met him. I think the whole meeting was, I don't know, over an hour or something, but with him I think it was less than half an hour. Mm-hmm. So this, hopefully that will clear it up a bit in terms of how these stories have rolled out.